Assalamu alaikum. Today we are going to start with the geometric design of highway facilities. We have earlier discussed the factors which can affect this design, but now we will discuss the actual design itself, how we are going to find out the dimensions of the alignment of the highway. The alignment of the highway can be divided into two planes, the vertical plane and the horizontal plane. And obviously the elements which you see in each plane becomes or is referred to with vertical elements or horizontal elements. So vertical elements of the alignment of the highway include the straight sections, which we call as the tangents, and the sections which are used for joining these sections. The tangents or the gradients are joined by curves so that we don't have sudden change in gradients or sudden change in vertical alignment. So normally in vertical plane we use parabolic curves. And then we come to horizontal elements. Horizontal elements again are comprised of straight sections, also called as tangents, and then we have curves which join these tangents. So these tangents are the horizontal tangents are basically different directions, and whenever you have a change in direction you will shift from one tangent to another tangent, and then you will need a circular curve to join these tangents. So normally in horizontal plane we use circular curves which are much simpler for the drivers, and in vertical plane we use parabolic curves. The straight sections of the vertical plane are called as tangents or gradients. Gradient is a more popular term or a more appropriate term. And then the straight sections, the horizontal plane, are called as tangents, which are basically the directions of the highway. When you are designing the alignment, now alignment basically means that you design the direction of the highway, the horizontal direction and the vertical direction. So there are some points which you should keep in mind when you are designing the alignment or the direction of the highway. The first and the most important point, which we have discussed in the previous chapters as well, follow the natural topography. Okay, if you have a flat surface, then you will have less curves, less change in gradients, and so on. Similarly, if you have a wide area available to you, then it will be easier for you to have a straight section rather than turnings, and vice versa. Okay, if you have a narrow section, then turnings becomes important, or if you have a steep gradient of the natural ground, then you would need to make your or align your vertical plane accordingly. So following the natural topography will eventually lead you to a least cost solution. Okay, whatever you are doing will eventually lead you to a least cost solution, because it will be easier for the contractor to follow your design in the natural conditions. Second thing you have to keep in mind is avoid sudden changes in vertical and horizontal layout. Okay, so and that's why we have the curves, and that's why we provide curves. So curves are providing these gradual changes. So whenever you have a vertical a change in vertical layout, meaning you are going from flat surface to a steep gradient, you have to do it gradually. Okay, so you don't go from 0 to 10 in one step. Okay, it may require multiple steps. Okay, and similarly, if you want to change the direction of the highway to 90-degree, then it will be easier for the driver if you do it in steps gradually. And third and the most important point is try to balance between the horizontal and vertical changes. Okay, what do we mean by balance? For example, so balancing means when you are making change in one plane, consider the other plane as well. If you are making a change in the horizontal plane, consider the change in the effect on the vertical plane as well. For example, you are trying to achieve horizontal curves which have large radius, so that it's easier for the driver to go over the curve. If you have a large radius, it's a flatter curve. Okay, but doing that, you are entering or providing a gradient which is very steep or which is very long for the driver. Okay, so obviously you are trying to increase the speed, but at the same time you are giving him so steep slope that he will not be able to maintain the speed. Secondly, you provide a sharp horizontal curve near the top of a vertical curve. Okay, so in that case it becomes hazardous. Okay, why? Because on curves the line of sight of the driver is restricted. Okay, so you are trying to basically accommodate everything in a smaller space, so the other section after the curves is flat and smooth and everything. But when you are combining all these things in a smaller area, basically you are restricting the safety of the driver. You are endangering his safety. You can see one image here which shows you that. So you see, I'm going from, so this is the horizontal curve. You can see how big is it. Okay, so you cannot basically see what is happening on the other side. If you are here, you cannot see what is happening on the other side. And at the same time, you can see the gradient of the road is changing. You are going up and then down, and everything is happening in this particular point. They have marked it. So going from here to here, you are changing your direction completely as well as your gradient. So it's a very big change for the driver. So it will endanger his safety. Okay, there's another image of what I was saying. Okay, so this image also shows you that the horizontal curve and the vertical curve, you can see it's a change in gradient. You are changing your gradient, you are going up. At the same time, it's a very sharp curve as well. So these things should be avoided. These are basically examples of poor design. Okay, so in this case you can see the radius of the curve is very large. At least the radius is very large, but you are doing it at the cost of providing a very steep gradient or change in gradient. Okay, but here you see the radius is very sharp. It's a very small curve, and then you are doing it at the top of a vertical curve as well. Okay, you're changing the gradient as well as the direction very sharply. So these are examples of poor design. Okay, try to avoid this combination and try to avoid neglecting one plane or one alignment, one part of the alignment when you're doing the other part of the alignment. Okay. So vertical curves are divided into two main types, crest curves and sag curves, and then within each type we have two subtypes. So these curves are the crest curves, and you can see their curvature is basically going upwards, and these are the sag curves, and their curvature is basically pointing downwards. So that is the main difference. Then what are the subtypes? You can see here, if you have a crest curve which has gradients in two different directions, so you have a positive gradient here, negative here, that is type 1. And then if you have a crest curve where both gradients are in the same direction, either both of them are positive like here, or both of them are negative like this one, then it is type 2. Similarly for sag curve, if you have gradients in different directions like this one, so you have a negative and a positive, and it's type 3. And then if you have gradients in the same direction, so you have both negative here or both positive here, so they are type 4. Okay, the rule is apart from these subtypes, if G1 is greater than G2, if the first gradient is more than the second gradient, considering the sign as well, so obviously positive is more than negative, right? And a higher positive number is greater than a lower positive number, and a higher negative number is lower than a lower negative number. Okay, so -4 is lower than -2. So following this rule, if you have a higher G1 and lower G2, then it's a crest curve, and vice versa. So if G1 is more than G2 is crest curve, if G2 is more than G1 it's a sag curve. Then to find out the length of the curve, we have different criteria. Let us talk about the criteria for finding out the length of a crest curve. So the criteria is based upon stopping sight distance. Okay, the point of stopping sight distance. So stopping sight distance is mandatory. It should be kept at all locations of the highway, including the curves as well. So we have to maintain a sufficient stopping sight distance for drivers on crest curve as well. Now you can see in the figure here is a crest curve. Okay, so you can see the crest of the curve, the top of the curve is basically blocking your line of sight. So I cannot see the other side of the curve because of the curvature. You can see it here as well. So if I'm here at this point, I cannot see what is happening on this point because of this curvature. Okay, so line of sight is restricted on vertical curves. Now there can be two scenarios. The first scenario is that the required sight distance is less than the length of the curve. So in order to stop, if I'm at this point, I can stop before I cross the whole curve. Okay, in that case, there's a different that is a different scenario. Okay, we will use different equations. The equations which you see on these slides are basically for the scenario in which is for this scenario that your required sight distance is more than the length of the curve. So if I decide that I have to stop on any point of this curve, I will basically stop after I cross the entire curve. Okay, so in that case the minimum length of the curve should be equal to this. Okay, where S means the sight distance, H1 is the height of the driver's eye above the ground, and H2 is the height of the object above the ground, the object for which you are stopping. Now a height of the driver's eye is taken as 3.5 feet, that is the normal height of a car driver above the ground, and H2 is taken as 2 feet. Why? Because normally on the road the most commonly found object in front of you will be another car. So 2 feet is the height of the tail light of the car. Okay, so H1 and H2 are basically taken from the reference of a car because that is the smallest vehicle. So if you put H1 as 3.5 feet in this equation and H2 as 2 feet, then the equation will become this. Okay, so instead of this whole term you can use 2158. Okay, and S as the sight distance, obviously it will change according to the speed of the vehicle. And then we have A here. A is the absolute difference between G1 and G2. So you have G1 and G2 here, you take the absolute difference between them, you'll get A. Okay, so you take the difference and then take the absolute value. Okay, so A cannot be negative. So this is the equation when sight distance is more than the length of the curve to find out the minimum length of the crest curve. Okay, similarly you can, instead of using H1 and H2 in feet, you can use them in meters as well. So instead of this equation you can use this equation. So this equation is to find out the length of the curve in meters. Then we have the other scenario where your sight distance required is less than the length of the curve. So if I decide on the curve that I have to stop, I can stop before crossing the whole curve. So in that case the equation for minimum length of the curve is this. Okay, so S is again the sight distance, A is the absolute difference of gradient, and H1 and H2 are the same for driver's eye and the object height. So the equations are these. Okay, you put H1 and H2, you get this, and then we have H1 and H2 in meters, and the final equation is this one. Okay, so you have two different equations for two different scenarios in each case. So in this example, a crest curve is given which is to be designed to join a gradient of 3% with minus 2%. So 3% is your G1 and 2% is your G2. Okay, and so G1 is higher than G2, it means a crest curve. We have to find out the length of the curve, and the design speed is 60 miles per hour. S is less than L, so I require sight distance less than L. Perception reaction time, which is basically a constant, 2.5 seconds, and deceleration rate can be taken as 11.2 feet per second. So the constants which I required for calculating the stopping sight distance are also given here. So first thing I have to do is I will find out the stopping sight distance. So in this case, U is the speed, 60 miles per hour, T is the perception reaction time given, and A is given deceleration rate. And basically if you go back to the actual equation of stopping side distance, you will see F here, but F equals A upon G. So G is 32.2 feet per square seconds and A is given in the question. So I will put A as 11.2. Now this is a gradient and two gradients are given here. There are two gradients given. So which of them I will put here? Now again you will see a small difference between the actual equation of stopping side distance and this one. This one is with a minus sign. So whatever gradient you will put here, it should be with a minus sign. Why? Because minus sign will give you higher stopping side distance. So I need to calculate the length for a higher stopping side distance. So I will be on the safer side. Okay, so I need higher stopping side distance here. That's why I'm keeping G as negative here. So whatever G you put here, the minus sign will remain as it is. Okay, so I have two values here. I can put 3% or I can put 2%. Okay, so obviously if you put 3% gradient, it will give you a higher value for SSD. Okay, but how will I justify minus sign then? Because 3 is positive. See here, 3 is positive, 2 is negative. So easier solution would have been I put 2 here and 2 is already negative, so the minus sign will remain. But the point is, on a highway you have two directions. So if one direction is having a positive 3%, then the other direction will have negative 3%. So both these gradients have a positive side and a negative side. Okay, so you can put 3% here as well and the negative sign can remain as it is. Okay, so I will put 0.03 as G here and minus sign will remain as it is. So whatever higher gradient you are given, you will put it in the equation and the negative sign will remain as it is. Okay, so like I said, I will put G as 3% and you will get stopping side distance 598 feet. Then for this condition, when S is less than L, I already have an equation to calculate the minimum length of the curve, which is this equation. Okay, so S is calculated and A is the absolute difference of G1 and G2. So if you do absolute difference of 3 minus 2, you will get 5, right? 3 minus and minus 2, it will be 5. So A is 5. So putting A as 5, you will get length 828.8 feet. Then this is another example. We have an existing curve. Okay, so the curve is already there and it is designed and the gradients are given, and fortunately the gradients are same, but one of them is positive, the other one is negative. So again G1 is more than G2, positive is more than negative. So the length of the curve is given. Maximum safe speed is required. We want to calculate maximum safe speed on the curve. Okay, and then we have to give the speed in terms of how much should be posted on the road. Okay, so calculate how much is the maximum safe speed and then give the recommendation about the posted speed on the road. And again the constants are given, deceleration rate and the reaction time, and condition is given that side distance is less than L. So now since the length is given, using the length I will calculate the side distance here. Okay, so A will be 4 minus 0.4, minus 4.4, so it will be 8.8. Length is 275, so side distance is 259.69 feet. Okay, and then I have the equation for side distance. Okay, so I know the side distance. I'm trying to calculate U here. So it's a quadratic equation, you have to solve it. And again, like I said, in this condition both gradients are same, so I'm putting 0.044 here and doesn't matter, again with a minus sign. And the speed from this comes out to be 34.7 miles per hour. Now I need to recommend a posted speed limit as well. Now posted speed limit I cannot put 34.7 on the speed limit, so I have to give them a round number. Okay, and that rounded number should be with an increment of 5 miles per hour. Increment means a multiple of 5. Increment simply means multiple of 5. So I have to give them a number which is multiple of 5, and that also satisfies this maximum limit. Okay, so the nearest multiple of 5 is 35, but if I go 35, it will be more than the safe speed on the curve. So 35 is not possible. Okay, it's more than this, and obviously I cannot go above it, so I have to go below. So the nearest possible or safest multiple of 5 is 30. Okay, so a posted speed limit of 30 on this road will be fine. Then we come towards sag curves. Now sag curve, again, they have a criteria of stopping sight distance for calculating the length, but they have two additional criteria as well. One of them is comfort and the other one is general appearance. So when you're designing a sag curve, you have to fulfill all three criteria. Okay, so starting with the stopping sight distance criteria. So these are the equations for stopping sight distance criteria. Now before we go on to stopping sight distance criteria, you can see here in the image that when you are on a sag curve, or you can see it here as well, you are coming from here, from a higher elevation towards a lower elevation. That's a shape of the sag curve, right? So you are always coming like this. So when you're coming like this, you are at a higher elevation, so your sight distance usually is not a problem unless you are driving in night conditions. You see here in this picture, we are driving in night conditions. So in night conditions, your sight distance will depend upon the beam of the headlight, how much is shown by the headlight. You can see, so I can only see up to this much, the distance which is shown by the headlight. So I have to incorporate the parameters of the headlight in the length of the curve equation. So you can see we are not using h1 and h2 here, we are using h and tangent beta, which are the parameters of the headlight. H is the height of the headlight above the ground, which we said in the previous case, 2 feet for a car, and tangent beta is the angle of inclination of the headlight beam from the horizontal. Okay, so beta is normally 1 degree. Okay, so in this equation, so this is the equation when s is greater than L. So you require a sight distance which is more than the length of the curve. So if you try to stop, you will stop after the curve. So s is greater than L. So this is the equation to find out the minimum length of the sag curve. And we require sight distance, we require the absolute difference of gradient, we require h and tangent beta. But for h and tangent beta, a car has a constant values. So you put h as 2 feet, beta as 1 degree. So the final equation will be this. So this is the final equation when s is greater than L. Okay, and if s is less than L, then this is the equation. And again in this equation, you can put h as 2 feet and tangent beta as 1 degree. So this is the final equation. Okay, so these are two equations. This one is for s less than L, this one for s greater than L. And then these are the equations for meters. Okay, so s greater than L, where h is in meters, so everything will be in meters. And this is for s less than L, and again everything is in meters. Okay, so this is for calculating length of the sag curve using sight distance criteria. Then this is the comfort criteria. Now because of the shape of the sag curve, sometimes the drivers do not feel comfortable when they are going over the curve. Okay, so it's like a swing, it feels like a swing. If it is too steep, if it is too sharp, it feels like a swing. So a swing is good for playing but not for driving. Okay, so we have to, why it feels? Because of the additional forces which will act on the car if the sag curve is too sharp. So we have gravitational forces and centrifugal forces. So we need to make the curve smoother so that the driver does not feel any discomfort. So we have the equation according to comfort criteria here. A means absolute difference of gradient and U is the speed. So minimum length of the curve according to comfort criteria will be taken using this equation. and if you are doing it in meters, then use this equation. And usually this distance is 75% of the length which you will get from the side distance criteria usually, but you have the equation, you can calculate the exact value. And this is for general appearance criteria. Again, a too sharp sag curve does not look good. So in areas where the aesthetic aspect is also important, so and you can use the general appearance criteria as well. So it's usually used for arterials. Okay, so that it looks good for the drivers as well, does not look too sharp for the drivers and anybody who is looking from anywhere. So the appearance criteria is the minimum length should be 100 times A in feet or 30 times A in meters, where A is the absolute difference of gradient. So for sag curve, you have to calculate 3 lengths and then you will select the best one. So let us look at this example. We have a sag curve and it's joining minus 5% with 2%. So G1 is less than G2, minus 5 is less than plus 2, right? Design speed is 40 miles per hour. You have to find out the minimum length of the curve to satisfy all criteria. Okay, side distance, appearance, and comfort. And the constants are given for the side distance calculation. So first thing is calculate the side distance. Then you can find out the minimum length according to side distance criteria. Then we will go for minimum length from other criteria as well. So for calculating the length according to side distance criteria, we need these things: G1, G2, and velocity and the constants, deceleration, and the perception reaction time. So this is a side distance equation. So we have everything, and G, again as I said, you will take the higher number, okay, so that you get the highest value of SSD with the negative, so negative sign remain as it is. So G1, you will take G1 and you will put G as just 5 because negative sign is already there, so you don't have to put minus 5. If you put minus 5, it will become plus, okay, which is not what we want. We want a minus gradient. So just put the value and just keep the minus sign as it is. Okay. And why we are emphasizing on minus sign? Because with minus sign you will get a higher value of stopping side distance. Okay. So just put G as 5 here and U as 40 and A as 11.2, T as 2.5, and you get the stopping side distance as 324.78 feet. And then we need to calculate the length according to this criteria. Now we had two criteria: S can be less than L or S can be greater than L. Okay, so you can assume any of these criteria and start your calculation. Okay, and then you can check later on whether your assumption was correct or not. In this case, a good practice is to always assume S is less than L. Always start with the assumption S is less than L. So for S less than L, this is the equation for calculating minimum length of sag curve. So we have A and we just calculated S 324.78. So you can calculate L minimum, which is 480.48 feet. Okay, so according to this criteria, I need 480 feet. Then we have comfort criteria. This is the equation for comfort criteria. My speed and A is given. Okay, so A will be 2 minus 5, it will be 7. Speed is 40 miles per hour. So the length according to comfort criteria is 240.86 feet. Then I'll use the general appearance criteria, which says length should be 100 times A. A is 7, so length is 700 feet. Okay. Now which length you will prefer out of these three values? So the swapping side distance criteria gave me a length of 480 feet. This one gives me 240 and this one gives me 700. Now if you pick 240, it's the least one, so it will not satisfy the side distance criteria or the appearance criteria. If I pick the side distance criteria length, that is 480, so I am fulfilling side distance criteria, I am fulfilling comfort criteria, but I am not fulfilling the appearance criteria. Okay, so if I pick 700, then I am fulfilling all the criteria. Okay, so According to comfort criteria, the minimum should be this, so 700 is more than this. According to sight distance criteria, the minimum should be 480, so 700 is more than this. Okay, so I will pick 700, which is fulfilling every criteria. Okay, now then there is a concept of k value. So what is k? K is the change in length per unit change in gradient. Per unit change in gradient. So change in gradient is a, okay, and the length of the curve is L. So k is calculated as L upon a. Okay. Now the equations which we have for sight distance criteria can be converted into equations for k instead of L, like this. You see here. So this equation is for L. So but if I put a on this side, okay, so instead of having L here, I can have k, because k equals L upon a. So if I put a on this side, this equation will become for, so k will go out from here, and the a will go out from here, and this equation will become for k. Okay, so if you use this equation, so the only thing which is not known in the equation is s, and s depends upon the speed. So if I give you the speed, you can calculate s, and if you can calculate s, then you can calculate k as well, because then it will be s square upon 2158. So we have a table for calculating or finding out the value of k, which is coming from this equation, sight distance equation. Okay, so if you know the speed, then you can calculate the sight distance, and using the sight distance and this equation, you can calculate the value of k. Okay, so this is the exact value of k, and this is the rounding off value of k, rounded off value of k. Okay, so this is just rounding off. These two columns are doing just rounding off. Okay, you can do the same thing for equations for sag curve as well. Okay, so you take the equation for sag curve, and instead of calculating L, you calculate k. So you will have the equation in terms of k and stopping sight distance. So again, you have the speed, you have the sight distance, and you have the value of k, the exact value, and the rounded off value. Now both these tables are for sight distance criteria. So you know, for sag curve we have more than one criteria. So when you want to apply other criteria, you have to go for their equations. This table is only for sight distance criteria, and same thing for crest. But for crest we only have one criteria, so the table is enough for crest curve. Secondly, for sight distance criteria we had two conditions, that s can be less than L or s can be greater than L. These tables are for this condition, s less than L, both these tables. Okay, because usually this is the case, s is usually less than L. Okay, sight distance is usually less than the length of the curve. So these two tables are for sight distance criteria. The tables for k are for sight distance criteria for crest and sag curve, and they are using the condition s less than L. So we have said earlier that vertical curves are parabolic in shape. So we apply the equation of a parabola in order to find out the elevations of any point on this curve. So this is the equation of the parabola, where y is the elevation above the starting point of the curve, and x is the distance from the starting point of the curve, and a, b, and c are the constants of the equation. We'll talk about them later on. If you look at the geometry of the curve, you will see G1 is the first gradient, BBC means beginning of vertical curve, and then you have these differences in elevation. So Y1 is the difference of elevation from the starting point for the highest point. Then you see this one, which is the difference in elevation between the curve and the tangent, the gradient. We call it Y or offset. Okay, Y or offset. Then we have this E, which is the difference in elevation of the point of intersection of the gradients and the curve. We call it the external distance. Okay, PVI means point of vertical intersection. And then we have the length of the curve. Now half of the curve is on one side of PVI and half on the other side. So if you take the difference from beginning to intersection, it will be half of the length. Then from intersection to end, it will be half of the length. And then we have G2, which is the final gradient of the curve. Now if you take the slope at any point of the curve, then it will be a derivative of this equation. Okay, if you want the slope on any point of the curve, it will be a derivative of this equation. So if you take the derivative of this equation, then y dash, which is the derivative of the slope, will be equal to 2ax plus b. Okay, and then if you take the second derivative, it will be the rate of change of gradient. Rate of change of gradient. Okay, so the first derivative was rate of change of elevation, slope. The second derivative will be the rate of change of gradient. So if you take the second derivative of this equation, you will be left with this 2a. Okay, now rate of change of gradient is what? Change in gradient was a, if you remember, capital A, change of gradient. And if you want rate of change of gradient, that will be a upon L. A upon L, length of the curve. How much change in gradient you have per unit length of the curve. So 2a can be made equal to a upon L, which is what we are doing here. Okay, so 2a equals rate of change of gradient upon, change of gradient upon length. So this becomes rate of change of gradient, which is equal to 2a, because it's a second derivative. So from this equation, a equals to this. Now why are we putting 100 here? Because a is in percentage, remember, G2 minus G1, so both are in percentage, so a will be in percentage. So in order to convert a back to fractions, we divide by a, or we divide by 100. So a becomes equal to this. Now if you come back to this equation, a is the first coefficient in the equation. Small a is the first coefficient in the equation. So this coefficient is equal to y, offset. Okay, so what is an offset? It's a difference in elevation of the gradient or the tangent and the curve, and it is calculated as small a. And small a from here equals to this. Okay, so this is what we call as the offset. Okay, so if you want offset at a particular distance from the BVC, then obviously you will take this term. So it will be ax square. Okay, so offset at any distance x, okay, which is represented as y here in this diagram. You can see y between the tangent and the curve. So it is given as this, okay, which is small a into x square, where x is the distance from BVC. Now let's say we want the elevation of the highest point of the curve or the lowest point of the curve. Sometimes the curve is passing under a bridge, so we want to make sure that the highest point of the curve has enough distance between the curve and the bridge. Sometimes the curve is passing over a underground cable or something, so we want to make sure that the lowest point of the curve is well above the cable or whatever you have, pipeline maybe. So let's say the highest point of the curve is y1 distance above BVC. What is BVC? It is the difference of elevation between BVC and the highest or the lowest point of the curve, whatever you are considering. The equations will remain the same. If it's a crest curve, so crest curve goes up, so you will be checking the highest point. If it's a sag curve, then it goes down, you will be checking the lowest point. So but the equation will remain the same. So y1 is the difference in elevation between the BVC and the highest or lowest point of the curve. Now how to get y1? If you from BVC to any point x, so x is the distance from BVC to the highest or the lowest point. Okay, so if you multiply the gradient with x, you will get the difference in elevation between BVC and the tangent or the gradient. Okay, so you will get the difference in elevation from BBC to the point on the tangent. Okay, so this is this thing. Now I don't want the elevation of the tangent, I want the elevation of this point, the point on the curve. Okay, and the difference between the point on the curve and the tangent is offset y, for which we calculated the equation in the previous slide. This was the equation for y. Okay, so you calculate the difference in elevation till the tangent, then you subtract y, so you will get the difference in elevation for the curve. Okay, you get y1. Now in this equation we know a equals g1 minus g2, so you can open it, so the equation will become equal to this, so y1 equals to this. Then if you want the slope of the equation, the slope of the point at the highest elevation or the lowest elevation, you take the derivative of this equation. So when you take the derivative, you will be left with this, and since it is the highest or lowest point on the curve, then the slope is always equal to 0. So you take the derivative and put it equal to 0, so you will get the equation for x. So I took the derivative of this equation, and since it was the highest or the lowest point on the curve, so slope is 0, so I put it equal to 0 and I got the equation for x. Then you take the value of x from here, this is the final value of x. Okay, so you take the value of x from here and put it in the equation for y1 again. Okay, so you will get the equation for y1, which is equal to this. Okay, so this is after putting the equation, the value for x and the equation for y1. So any highest point or lowest point on the curve is at a distance of x from the starting point and at a distance of y1 from the starting point, and for both of them you have the equations here. So we have this example, a gradient of minus 2.5% is connecting 1% gradient, and it has the curve has a length of 180 meters. The intersection point is at a station of 100, and the elevation of this intersection point is 100 meters. And we want the station and elevation of the lowest point of the curve. Now why they are saying the lowest point? Because if you see G1 is less than G2, so it's a sag curve. So for sag curve, since it is going downward, so we check the lowest elevation. So first of all, we will calculate the value of x. So we need L, which is 180 meters here. We need G1, which is minus 2.5. And we need G1 minus G2, which will be 1 minus 2.5. Okay, so you will get the value for x from here, which comes out to be 128.6 meters. Okay, now this is the distance from the starting point, it's not the station. Okay, station is somewhere behind that at point 0. So what is the station of the lowest point from station 0? Okay, and I have the station of PVI here. Okay, so PVI minus what is 90 is half of 180, half of the length. Remember I told you the distance between PVI and the beginning is always half of the length. So from 100, which is a station for PVI, I subtract 90. Okay, because this is half of the length, and then I divide it by 30. Why did I divide by 30? Because it's in meters, and each 30 meter is one station, and 100 is number of stations, right? So I can subtract stations from stations. So in order to convert 90 into stations, I divide by 30 because it's in meters. So every 30 meters is a station. So 100 stations, which is for PVI, minus 90, which is the length from PVI to BBC, upon 30 to convert to stations. Then minus plus 128.6 meters. Okay, now why from 128 I separated 120 because 120 can be divided into number of stations. You see here 120 divided by 30 will give you 4 stations. So 120 is a multiple of the 30 meters. So I separated 120 meter because a multiple of my stations 30 meters, so 120 by 30 plus the remaining 8.6. Okay, so it will be 100 minus half of the length plus the distance from BBC, which is 128.6, and then you have to convert to stations. So if you have a multiple of 30, you just separate it and divide by 30, you get the stations, and whatever is remaining you will add or subtract it separately. Okay, so 100 minus 90 by 3 plus 120 by 3 will give you 101 stations, and then the remaining is 8.6, so I wrote 8.6 separately here. So this is the stationing of the lowest point on the curve. Then for the elevation, first of all I will find out the difference in elevation between the lowest point on the curve and the BBC, that is y1. So I already have the things here. So y1 comes out to be minus 1.61 meters. Now why it is minus? Because it's a sag curve, so you are calculating lowest point which is below BBC. So minus sign represents basically that you are going down, so you have to subtract to get the elevation. Again, this is y1 from BBC. We want elevation from the 0 point. Okay, this is not from 0 point, this is from the beginning of the curve. So from 0 point the elevation of PBI is given 100 meters. So if I want the elevation of the lowest point of the curve, I'll do this 100, which is the elevation of PBI, plus 2.5, which is the first gradient, upon 100 because in percentage, multiply by 90. What is 90? The distance between PBI and BBC. So 100 plus this will give you the elevation of BBC. Okay, 100 elevation of PBI plus this ratio into 90 will give you elevation of BBC, because G1 into distance, right? G1 into distance is 90. Then from BBC I know my required point is 1.61 meters down with minus, so I subtracted 1.61 meters from it. So the elevation of the lowest point is 100.64 meters. So if you're designing a vertical curve, then these are the procedures you have to follow. First of all, find out the length of the curve. It will depend upon what type of curve you have, and you will apply the criteria of that type of curve. And then you have to find out you have to go to the field, find out the gradients and the point of intersection, the station and elevation of point of intersection. Then calculate the beginning of the curve BBC and end of the curve BBC. Then find out offsets, and you find out the elevation. First of all find out the offsets at equal stations from BBC. Okay, so from BBC, after BBC at each station 100 feet or 30 meters, whatever units you are following, find out offsets, the difference between the gradient and the curve, and then using the offset you will find out the elevations. Okay, so again at each station from the beginning of the curve, and then in the end you will find out so first of all find out offset, then elevation of the tangent or the gradient, and then you will find out the elevation of the curve. Okay, so let us apply these steps. So we have an example of a crest curve here. It's joining 3% with minus 4%. Design speed is 75 miles per hour. The tangents are intersecting at PBI. The station of PBI is given 345 plus 60. Elevation of PBI is given. We have to find out BBC, EBC, and then we have to find out the elevations of intermediate points on the curve which are at complete stations. So first of all we need the length of the curve. Okay, so for finding out length of the curve we have the K table with us. Okay, so we know the design speed is 75 miles per hour. If you come here at 75 miles per hour, the rounded off K value is 312. So then length equals K into A. Okay, so where A is the absolute difference of gradients. So if you do minus 4 minus 3, you will get minus 7. If you take absolute, it will be 7. So K into 7 will give you 2184 feet. So this is the minimum length of the curve. Since it is a crest curve, so I only need to do the side distance criteria. So this is the final length of the curve. Then I'll calculate the stationing of BVC. So the stationing of PVI is given, okay, 345 plus 60. Then I will subtract half of the length, okay, half of the length. So length is 2184, you subtract half of it. And now remember, each station is now 100 feet because now we are in feet units. Okay, so each station is 100 feet. So divide 2184 by 2, you will get half of the length, and then you further separate the complete 100 feet and subtract it from 345 and the remaining from 60. So you will get 334 plus 68 stations. Okay, or you can simply do this. Instead of 345 plus 60, you write 345. So these are 345 feet, right? Because each station is 100 feet. So 345 means 4500, and then plus 60. So you write simply 60 with it, and then you can simply subtract. So now it has become distance. Now instead of stations, it is distance, and then you do the subtraction. 2184 by 2. Okay, so you have distance and distance here, so you will get something. That something will be basically 33468. Okay, so before the last two digits you put the plus sign, 334 plus 68. So 334 complete stations, 33400 plus 68 feet extra. Then for elevation, sorry, for EVC you will do the same thing, but now instead of subtracting, you will add. Okay, so you are repeating the same process but with a plus sign here. So the station of EVC is 356 plus 52. Then the elevation of EVC is elevation of PVI here, which is 250 feet. Okay, you can see it here. Minus by minus, because you can see in the image here BVC is below PVI, so you do minus. The gradient is 3%, so minus 3% into the distance from between PVI and BVC is half of the length, so half of the length here. So the elevation of BVC is 217.24 feet. For elevation of EVC, you just have to change the gradient. Okay, so the gradient of the second gradient is minus 4%. So instead of 3%, you will use 4 here, but again the length is the same, and again you are going down. PVI is up, EVC is down, so you subtract it, so you get the elevation of EVC. Now this table represents the offsets and elevations of tangents and curve points on the curve at each station. So you start with BVC here. The station was of BVC we already calculated. Since you are at BVC, so x distance will be 0. The elevation is the same elevation which you calculate for BVC. Okay, so it's the same. Whether it's a tangent elevation or the curve elevation, it will remain the same, because at BVC it's the beginning of the curve. So tangent and curve are meeting, so the elevations are same. And they obviously, when elevations are same, that means there is no offset, there is no difference between the curve and the tangent. Second point will be the next complete station from BVC. So after 334, the next station is 335 plus 00. Okay, this one was plus 334 plus 68, but the next complete 100 feet is at 335 plus 00. So you take the difference between these 2 points, so it will be 33500 minus 334.68, you get 32 feet. Okay, so this becomes your x. Then you calculate tangent elevation. So tangent elevation will be the elevation of BVC plus x into gradient. So x is 32 and the gradient is 3 upon 100. Why we are adding? Because it's a crest curve and you are going up. Okay, for crest curve you go up, right? So that's why we are adding here. So the elevation of this point on the tangent is 218.20. Then the offset will be calculated from this equation. So x is already calculated here. A is the absolute difference of gradient between G1 and G2, and L is the length of the curve we calculated in the previous slide, which was 2184. So you calculate the offset, and the curve elevation will be tangent elevation minus offset. Tangent elevation minus offset. Because it's a crest curve, so the shape of the curve is like this. This is the tangent and this is the curve. So offset is this distance. This distance is offset. So you have tangent elevation, curve elevation, which is this point, so minus y. Okay, so you subtract y and you get elevation of the curve. So this is what we are doing here. Okay, then for each point you will repeat the same process. You just have to change the value of x. So at each point you are changing the value of x, and since you are adding 100 feet each time, so x will increase by 100 feet and everything will change according to x. The last point is EVC. So the last station will be 356. After 356 you cannot go to 357, right? Because before 357 the curve ends. So last point will be EVC. X will be equal to the length of the curve, and if you repeat the calculations you will get the elevation of EVC, which we have already calculated. So you can check whether you are doing the calculations by EVC. This is an example of a sag curve. We have vertical curve joining -3 with +3% gradient. PVI is given, elevation of PVI is given, and again we have to repeat the same process, find out VVC, EVC and the speed. So this speed is given, and then we have to find out the elevations at 100 feet stations. Now it's a sag curve, so there are multiple criteria which you have to apply for finding out the length of the curve. So the first criteria was side distance. For that we have the K table. So the speed is 70 miles per hour. So at 70 miles per hour the value of K is 181. So if you multiply 181 with A is G1 minus G2, it will be 6. So 181 minus multiplied by 6 will give you the length 1086 feet. Then you can find out the stationing of BVC and EVC. But before that we have to check the other criteria. Now we have comfort criteria. This is the equation for comfort criteria. U is the speed here, A is 6 here, so the length is 632 feet according to comfort criteria. And if I apply the appearance criteria, then it's 100 times A, where A is 6, so the length is 600 feet. So we will select this one, this length 1086 feet, because it is satisfying all criteria. Okay, it is satisfying the minimum of comfort. It is also satisfying the minimum of appearance criteria as well. So now you can find out the station of BVC. So it will be PVI station 435 plus 50 minus half of the length, and again you have to convert to stations. So you can write 43550 and minus half of this, and then you convert it back to stations. So it will be 43007, and then you place a sign of plus before the last 2 digits. And then for EVC repeat the same process but with a plus sign. So you have the stations of BVC and EVC. Then for elevation, now the distance between PVI and BVC and PVI and EVC is the same, half of the length. We just did it here. So it's half of the length. Now distance is same, and if you look at the gradients are also same. Both of them are 3%. Okay, and if you look from PVI, in both directions you are going up, right? So from PVI both gradients are upwards. So from PVI distance to BVC and EVC is same, gradient value is same, and the direction is also same. So obviously you don't have to calculate elevations differently, because it will be the same value. When everything is same, obviously the elevation will be the same. So elevation of BVC will be equal to elevation of EVC in this case only, and it will be equal to PVI elevation for 235 feet plus, because you are going up 3%, so 3 by 100 into the distance, which is half of the length, So the elevation of BVC and EVC is 251.29 feet. Now you can calculate the elevation of the rest of the point using this table here. So we have starting from BVC again, so we have 0 and elevation of BVC, which will be the tangent elevation. We have 0 offset because x is 0, and tangent elevation will also be curve elevation. So no problem here. Come to the second point. After 430 plus 07, the next station is 431 plus 00. So if you take the difference between them, it will be 93 feet. If you calculate the elevation of tangent at this point, you will do it like this. You will have BVC elevation which is 251.29 minus 3% because it's a gradient. And why minus? Because you see from BVC I'm going down. From BVC the tangent is going down. Okay, so the tangent going down, so I will do minus, and then 3% into x. So x is here 93 feet. So BVC elevation is 251.29 minus 3%, so it will be 3 upon 100 into x, which will be 93. So if you do this, you will get 248.5 feet. Okay, and then for curve for offset, just put the value of x here and the a and the l. Okay, everything is calculated already, shown in the previous slides. So you will get 0.24. Okay, and the curve elevation will be tangent elevation plus offset. Why plus offset? You see, tangent is lower than the curve. So you have tangent elevation, you want curve elevation, so you will add. Okay, so that's why we are adding here, and which is usually the case for sec curves. For sec curves, you have to add the tangent elevation with offset to get the curve elevation. For crest curve, it's the reverse. You subtract offset from the tangent elevation for crest curve. So I repeat the process, and in the end, like we said, you should be getting the elevation of EVC. In this case, it was equal to the elevation of BVC as well. So you see, we are getting the same number again. Now let us talk about horizontal alignment. Horizontal alignment consists of straight sections, which we also call as tangents, and curves, which are used to join these tangents. So whenever you have a change of tangent, meaning a change of direction, you will do it with a curve. So when you are designing the horizontal alignment, you have to follow these steps. First of all, find out where the curve is changing, where the tangent is changing, and then for that change point you design a radius. For radius, we have an equation with the speed of the road, which we discussed in chapter 3. Then find out the length of the curve, and then using radius and length, you will find out the offsets for points on the horizontal curve now. So these are different offsets. These are not the offsets which we are doing for vertical curves. So find out the offset again for intermediate stations at full intermediate stations, full stations for the horizontal curve now. Now horizontal curves can be of 4 types. You have simple curve, compound curve, reverse curve, and spiral curve. So we will discuss each one of them one by one. Starting with a simple curve. A simple curve is part of a circle. So we also call it a simple circular curve. The radius of a circular curve can be calculated using this equation, where u is the speed, g is the gravitational force, e is the super elevation, and fs is the coefficient of side friction. You can see the geometry of the curve here. The starting point is PC, which we also call as the point of curve. Ending point is PT, which we also call as the point of tangent. Then we have T here, distance T, which is the distance from PC to PI, point of intersection. PI is the point of intersection where the two tangents are intersecting each other, and the angle at which they are intersecting is called delta. We also call it the deflection angle. The radius of the curve is represented with R. This line which you see, which is joining PC to PT, we call it the chord length, and the angle between the chord and the tangent is always half of delta, half of the deflection angle. And if you take the angle which is made by the curve from start to end, it will also be delta. And if you take the angle to the middle of the curve, it will be delta by 2. Then we have these two distances E and M, which are taken from Pi. So from Pi, if you take distance to the middle of the curve, we call it E, or external distance. If you take the distance between the middle of the curve, sorry, not the middle, from the curve to the chord in line with Pi, then it will be the M middle ordinate. So this is the geometry of the curve. To calculate the parameters of the curve, we have one important parameter which we call as the degree of the curve. Degree of the curve is the angle made by a curve of 100 feet length. So if the length of the curve is 100 feet, then the angle made by that curve is called as degree of the curve, and it is represented with dA. Okay, how do we get the value of dA? Now we all know the relationship S equals R theta. Length of the curve equals radius into the angle of the curve. So you can see the equation here, S equals R theta. And then we multiply theta with pi by 180 because theta is in radians and we want to convert it to degrees. So we multiply theta with pi by 180. Then since we know that S is 100 feet and theta is dA, degree of the curve. So when theta is dA, then length is 100 feet. So if we put theta as dA and we put S as 100 feet, so the equation becomes this. And from this equation, you can get the value of R here. So from this equation, you have the value of R here. Okay, so R equals to this. Now in this equation, you have 180 here, 100 here, pi here. All of them are constants. So instead of having these three numbers, you can convert it to one constant number here, which is this. So R equals 5729.6 upon degree of the curve. Your degree of the curve is the angle subtended by a curve of 100 feet. Now instead of using feet, if you are using meters, then instead of 100, you will have 30 meters here. Then R will be equal to this, 1718.18 upon degree of the curve. Okay, so this is the equation for feet, this is the equation for meters. Then these are the equations for other parameters of the curve. For tangent length, we have this equation, R tangent delta by 2. For chord length, and this is for external distance, the distance between Pi and the curve. And this is for middle ordinate, the straight distance between the curve and the chord. And this is the equation for length of the curve. And you can see in all these equations, I need R and delta. So once you have R and delta, you can calculate all the remaining parameters. And I showed you the equation for calculating R if you have the speed. Now, after calculating all the parameters, we need to find out the offsets to the intermediate points on the curve so that we can lay out the curve on the ground. Okay, so we have to find out offsets from the tangent to the curve. Offsets from the tangent to the curve. So for that, what we do is we divide the curve into small segments. You can see these are smaller curves. So we have the bigger curve here from PC to PT, and this curve is divided into small segments here. So each of these diagonal line is showing a part of the curve. Okay, a small segment of the curve. Now for each small segment, we calculate this angle, the angle between the tangent and the chord. The chord is not for the whole curve. The chord is just for this part of the curve. Okay, so you can see it's not the angle to this line. The angle is to the line for the chord of each segment of the curve. Okay, and we said the angle between the chord and the tangent is always half of the angle of the curve. So if this angle is delta 1, then the tangent has an angle of half of delta 1 from the chord. Okay, so whatever is this angle is the half of that. So if you know the angle of the segment of the curve, then half of that angle will be the angle of the chord and the tangent. Okay, so for each segment of the curve, you will find out what is the angle between the chord and the tangent for that segment of the curve, and you will find out the length of the chord. So length of the chord, we have this equation which you can see here. So we already had the equation for chord length. The only difference is, instead of using delta, I'll use a small delta, which is the delta for the segment of the curve. Okay, so I will not use the complete angle of the curve. I will just use the angle which is made by this small segment of the curve. Okay, now you can see the segment of the curve is increasing by an angle d. Okay, why? Because d is the angle made by 100 feet of the curve, and 100 feet means what? One station. So each segment is one station bigger than the previous one. Okay, so you have this segment, the next one will be 100 feet more, the next one will be 100 feet more. Why 100 feet? Because it's one station. So every time the deflection angle will be increased by one station length of the curve. So the angle will increase by d. Okay, d is the deflection angle. So you can see for the first part it will be just any angle delta, and then for each part it will increase by d by 2, which is the degree of the curve. So we have this example, we have a 4-degree curve. So 4 is the degree of the curve. Then we have the angle, intersection angle, deflection angle is given 55 degree 25 minutes. PC station is given, the starting point of the curve is given. They want us to find out length of the curve, end of the curve, PT, and the deflection angles and the chord lengths for these intermediate segments of the curve, so that they can set out the curve. Now to find out the length, I have this equation, and this equation I have delta, but I need a value of r. And for getting the value of r, I have this equation between radius and degree of the curve. Since degree of the curve is given d, 4 degrees here, so I will put dA as 4 degrees, and you will get value of r this much. Then using this value, you will calculate length of the curve, which is 1385.42 feet. So after calculating the length of the curve, the next thing you will calculate is the stationing of EVC. So we have the stationing of PC here. Okay, so in that you will add the length of the curve, which we calculated in the previous slide. So again, you can do the same thing. You can remove the plus sign from here, so it will become distance, because it's in feet. So it will become the distance. Then you add this much into it, and then you can put the plus sign back, 2 digits, 2 whole number, two integers before the distance. So the final station of PT is 30.17, 252 plus 30.17. Then we have to prepare this table. So the first column is the stations. You start with PC, end at PT, and then between them you have full stations like we had for vertical curves. So after 238 plus 44, the next station is 239, then 240, and so on. Then you have to calculate the half of the deflection angle. Why half? Because we are calculating the angle between the between the tangent and the chord, which is half of the angle of the curve. So you find out half angle from here. Okay, so how do we do that? You have this ratio, you will apply this ratio approach. So the ratio of the complete length of the curve upon half of the complete angle of the curve will be equal to the length of the small part of the curve upon half angle of the small part of the curve, because it's the same curve, right? The small part is for the same complete curve, so the ratios will be equal. So the complete length is 1385.42. Delta was 55 degree 25 minutes. So you take this ratio equals x, which is the distance between these two, PC and the next station. So this one, and then So you take the difference, you will get x, and then it will be divided by half of the angle of this small part of the curve. So we don't know delta, so this delta we are trying to find out. So we have all the other parameters, we will find out delta. So delta by 2 from this equation comes out to be 1 degree 6 minutes and 18 seconds. And if you want to find out the chord length, you will use this. Okay, so for the first point there is no chord length. For the second point, you put delta by 2 from here. So you just have to put the value directly, okay? Don't have to divide by 2 again. So you put delta by 2 and you get chord length here. Now for the next point, you can again apply the same approach. Okay, it's fine here, but how much are we adding in the distance for the next point? We are adding 100 feet in the distance. Okay, so the angle will increase for every 100 feet increase in length. The angle increases by degree of the curve, and degree of the curve is 4 degrees. So half of that is 2 degrees. So you can see the deflection angle is increasing by 2 degrees. See, from 1 to 3 to 5 to 7. Why? Because you are adding 100 feet in the length. So whenever you add 100 feet in the length, half of deflection angle will increase by half of the degree of the curve. So degree of the curve was 4 degrees. So this angle will increase by 2 degrees. So you keep on adding 2 degrees in the angle until you reach the last point. And the last point, you are at the last station. So you have completed the whole curve. So the deflection angle again will be for the whole curve. So it will be simply delta by 2. So your delta was 55 degree 25 minutes. So you just take half of it and you put it here. So for getting the last point, you don't have to do any ratio or don't have to add the degree of the curve. You just take the half of the complete angle of the curve. Then we have the chord lengths, and just whatever angle you have here, you take the sine of that angle, multiply by 2r, you get the chord length. Then we have another type of horizontal curve, which is a compound curve. So compound curve consists of more than one circular curves which are directly joined with each other. A compound curve is a combination of multiple circular curves which are joined with each other. So you can see we have two curves here which are joining with each other. So this is the first circular curve, the second circular curve, and the point at which they are joining is called as PCC. Okay, PCC. So these curves are normally used at intersections or ramps, especially where the area is restricted. Curves need more area. So if you make a compound curve, you can limit your area. Compound curves usually take or require less space than a simple circular curve. So by using a compound curve, you can restrict the space requirements. Then we have the AASHTO standards, that the ratio of the curves, the radius of the curve, should not be more than 2:1. So if one curve is 500 feet, the next one should be like 250 feet. Okay, and so on. If one curve is 1000 feet, the other one should be 500 feet. Okay, you can make this ratio less. You can have a lower ratio. So how much lower you can get? You can get up to 1.75:1. So instead of 2:1, if you give up to 1.75:1, still it is allowable. Now in this, if you see the geometry of the curve, I told you PCC is a point of compound curve where the two curves are meeting. Delta 1 and delta 2 are the deflection angles of individual curves. Then we have a small t1 and capital T1. A small t1 is the tangent length for one of the curves, and capital T1 is the tangent length for the complete compound curve combination. And same thing for T2 and small t2 and capital T2. Okay, then we have PC, which is the starting point of the first curve, and we have the PT, which is the end of the last curve. Okay, and between them we have PCC. And the complete deflection angle for the entire curve is delta, and pi will be for the point of intersection between the two tangents, the two main tangents. Okay, the tangents of individual curves are meeting at points G and H. So point G is the intersection angle for the first curve, H is the intersection angle of the intersection point of the second curve, and their radius are R1 and R2. Now the length of any single curve within the compound curve has these standards. Okay, so if your radius is this much, then you can have this much length of the curve. This is the radius. So you design the radius and then you can take the length of the curve from this table. So in this table you have acceptable lengths, which are these. So these are minimum criteria, and then we have the desirable ones, which is more than the acceptable. So if permitted, you should always go with the desirable values, the second row. But if it is not possible to take this value, then at least take these values, the first row. You cannot go below any value than these. Okay, the values in the first row. Then, as I told you, if you do the summation of delta 1 and delta 2, you will get complete delta. And then T1 and T2 are the tangent lengths for individual curves. So instead of, you see here, we are using R1 and delta 1 here. So it's the same equation of tangent, but instead of using R and delta, we are using R and delta for each curve. Okay, so R1 delta 1, R2 delta 2. Okay, then you see between Pi, G and H, we have a triangle here. And this triangle, this angle is delta 1, this angle is delta 2, and obviously this one will be 180 minus delta 1 minus delta 2, right? The summation of three angles of the triangle will be 180, right? So if you have the first angle and the second angle, the third one will be 180 minus these two. And delta 1 and delta 2 is what? Equals to delta. So instead of doing 180 minus delta 1 and minus delta 2, I'll simply write 180 minus delta. Okay. So this equation is basically the application of sine law on this triangle. So if you apply a sine law in this triangle V, G and H, it will be like this. So VG is the side and delta 2 is the opposite angle, and VH is the side, delta 1 is the opposite angle. Okay, then T1 and T2 is the third side, and 180 minus delta is the third angle. Then if you need T1 here, which is the distance between PC and PI, so you have T1 here plus this distance, the remaining distance. So T1 is the tangent of the first curve plus the remaining distance, which is G and V, between point G and V, where V is Pi. Okay, so if you add T1 plus GV or VG, you will get the tangent length from PC to Pi, and same thing here. If you want this tangent length, it will be T2 plus V and H, the distance between V and H. Okay, now let us do this example. We have a compound curve. The point where the two curves are meeting is given, PCC is given. The angle of each curve is given. The radius of each curve is given. And they want to find out the deflection angles of the intermediate points to lay out the curve or set out the curve. So first of all, PCC is given. First of all, I need to calculate PC and PT. So for PC and PT, I need the length of each curve. Okay, the distance between PCC and PC is the length of this curve, and from PCC to PT is the length of the second curve. So for finding out the length of any curve, this is the equation. So when I'm finding out the length of the first curve, I will use R1 500 feet and delta 1 34 degrees. So you get L1. And for length of the second curve, I will use R2 350 feet and delta 2 26 degrees. So you get L2. Then PC will be the station of PCC, this point, minus the length of this curve. So 296.71 L1. So the station of PC is this. and PT will be station of this point plus the length of the second curve, which is 158.82. It will give you the station of PT. So now you have PC and PT. Let us do the layout of the curve or setting out of the curve. So we have made this table earlier as well. So we start with PC here, and the next station is at 563. So at first point we don't have anything, deflection angle or chord length 0 0. At next point we take the difference between them, so that will be the distance, and then you do the ratio again like we did previously. So complete length upon delta half of the complete angle. The complete length will be the length of the first curve, okay, and delta will be this curve for the first curve, 34 degrees, okay. And again x will be the distance between 563 and PC, which is this one, upon delta by 2. So delta by 2 comes out to be 3 degrees 32 minutes 8 seconds here, and you put it in the equation of chord length, you get 61.66 feet chord length. For the next point you are adding 100 feet, okay. So you will add the angle by half of degree of the curve. So we know the radius, which is 500 feet. So you do 5729.6 upon radius, you will get the degree of the curve, and you will add half of degree of the curve here, okay. And then for the next point again add half of the degree, and for the last point it will be just simply half of this angle, 34 degree, okay. And each time you will put delta by 2 here, take the sine, multiply by 2r, you get the chord length. Now you have reached PCC here. Now PCC is the end of this curve but with the beginning of the next curve. So for PCC you will start the new curve, okay. So this point becomes it's written here again as the starting of the new curve. So again the deflection angle chord length is 0, but this is for the new curve now. And then the next point is 566. So you will again apply the ratio approach, but now using the length and the deflection angle of the second curve, this one, okay. So you find out the angle, it comes up to 5 degree 90 minutes 16 seconds. The chord length is this. And then after 566 I cannot go to 567 because the next point is PT now, okay. 566 plus 93.82. So you don't have to worry about the degree of the curve, just simply do the half of the deflection angle for this curve. So half of deflection angle is half of 26 degrees is 13 degrees, and you take the chord length. Then we have reverse curve. Reverse curve is also a combination of circular curves, but these curves are in different directions. These are two curves which are similar to each other, but they are different directions. So you can see a reverse curve here. So this curve and this curve is the same, but they are in different directions. So these curves are usually used to change the alignment of the highway. So you are going in this alignment and you want to shift the highway towards this alignment. So maybe this way is blocked because of a mountain or a river. So you want to shift from this alignment to this alignment, you use a reverse curve, okay. But reverse curves are very dangerous, so normally we try to avoid them. Then this is the geometry of the reverse curve. The radius of both the curves is same, r. Their angle is same, delta. And the distance between the two parallel tangents is small d. Okay, the shift in alignment is small d. And the straight distance between the beginning and the end of the reverse curve is capital D. So the angles are same. And if you take the angle between the tangent, any tangent, and the chord, then it will be half of the deflection angle, okay. So you can see OWX and OYZ is basically these angles, okay, the angle between the tangent and the chord. And if you look at this triangle WZY or XYW, you will see it's a right angle triangle, and for this right angle triangle the angle is delta by 2, between tangent and the chord, and the perpendicular is D, and the base is capital D. So tangent delta by 2 gives you this, and if you put capital D on one side, then capital D equals to this. Okay, now if you look at this image here, if I want to calculate a small d, okay, so I can do I have this length here which is equal to radius, and if I take cos of delta 1, I will get the component of radius on this axis, on the horizontal axis, or I will get the horizontal component. Okay, so I have complete distance r here. Okay, from r, okay, if you subtract r cos delta, you will get half of d. So from here, from w to z, I have r, and from this, if you subtract r cos delta, which is basically the horizontal component of this distance, if you subtract r cos delta, you will get half of a small d. So if you want complete d, then you have to do it twice. So this is what we are doing here. R minus r cos delta, this will be half of d. Then you do it again, r minus r cos delta. So this will be the value of d. And from this equation, you can get the value of r. So r in terms of small d is equal to this much. Okay. And from this equation, you can have the value of delta here as well. So cos delta on one side, everything on the other side. So you can use this equation to calculate delta as well. So we have this example here. We have an arterial road connected to a frontage road. Frontage road is also something what we call as a service road as well. So you have the main road, and beside the main road you have one lane. Okay, like you have a curb or a sidewalk or something, or a barrier. Then after the barrier you have a small road, a small lane, and if that on that small lane you can park your vehicle, you can go to shops beside the road and everything. So that is called a frontage road or a service road, or the small lane we have, and that is basically parallel to the arterial. So if you want to go from arterial to that frontage road, you have to make a reverse curve. Okay, because these are the two parallel tangents. So the distance between the center line of the two roads, meaning the arterial and the frontage road, is 60 feet. So this becomes my small d. Okay, PC of the curve is given, deflection angle of the curve is given, and we have to find out the station of PT. Okay, now from PC to PT, we have two circular curves, both having the same length. Okay, so I need to calculate the length of the curve, and then if I add PC plus 2 times the length, I will get PT. Okay, so but the length equation requires radius. Okay, so I need to calculate radius. So they have given me small d and the angle is given delta. So I will use this equation to calculate radius, and then once I calculate radius, the length of the curve equals to this. Then if you need PT, then PT is station of station of PC plus 2 times the length of the curve. So 139.71 multiplied by 2, you'll get the station of PT here. So now let us talk about transition curves. So transition curves are basically not used alone. They are used in conjunction with a circular curve or a pair of circular curves. So transition curve is provided between a tangent and a circular curve, or between one circular curve and the other circular curve if you have a compound or a reverse curve. Okay, so the purpose of transition curve is that the driver can change his radius, his curvature of driving, in a gradual manner. So for example, if he is driving on a straight line, then his radius is basically infinity. He is driving on an infinite curve. So in order to get from that infinite curve to a circular curve, we want to provide a gradual change for him. So that gradual change is provided by a transition curve. Or he is driving on one curve which has a radius of r1, and we want him to go from r1 to r2 in a gradual manner. So between two circular curves, we will provide a transition curve. Now there is another name given for a transition curve which is provided between a tangent and a curve, that is a spiral curve. So a spiral curve is a kind of transition curve which is provided between a tangent and a circular curve. Another recommendation is about the super elevation. Now you know we need some sort of super elevation, that means the cross-sectional slope of the road, to attain a certain value when the driver is on the curve. Now that change of super elevation should happen before the curve begins. So ideally that change of super elevation should happen on a transition or a spiral curve. Okay, because so that when the driver enters the curve, the circular curve, the cross section of the road has already attained the required super elevation. So this is another use of providing a transition or a spiral curve, so that the change in cross section slope to the required super elevation can be attained. The minimum length of the spiral of the transition curve can be calculated using these two equations. So we have the minimum length of the curve equals to this, where u is the velocity, speed, r is the radius which you want to achieve in the end, and c is the rate of increase of acceleration, and its value can change according to speed, but it has a range of 1 to 3 feet per square seconds per second. Then we have p minimum. If you look at the second equation, we have a new term here, p minimum, which is the offset between the tangent and the circular curve, which is happening because of the spiral curve. So we already know about the offset, the distance between the tangent and the curve. So if there was no spiral curve or there was no transition curve, then in that case there will be no offset at the starting point between the spiral curve, between the circular curve and the tangent. But because you put a spiral curve at the starting point, so now we have created an offset, a distance between the start of the circular curve and the tangent. So that distance is called as a p minimum, lateral offset. Okay, and its value is usually 0.66 feet. Now for the first equation I was able to find the equation in meters as well. So this is the equation which you can use for finding out L minimum in meters as for the first equation. Okay, this one. Okay, so if you want to use in feet you can use this one, if you want to use in meters you can use this one. I was not able to find any equation in meters for this one, but you can just simply use the value of p minimum and r in meters, so that equation will be in meters. Now we talked about super elevation earlier, so let us see how super elevation is attained. Super elevation, so we have a normal slope of the road which you can see here. Okay, at this section we have the normal slope of the road. You can see it's like a triangle which you have seen in your term projects as well, and the assignment as well. Then we need to convert this into something like this. Okay, something like this. So it will be done gradually. So it will be done in two parts. The first part is when the super elevation is changed from the normal slope to a zero slope, and then when the zero slope is converted into full super elevation. Okay, so this should be the start of your circular curve. Okay, and this transition should happen from here to here. The transition should happen on the tangent or on the spiral curve. Okay, so this part is called as tangent runout, the part in which the curve is changed from normal to zero. We call it tangent runout because it happens on the tangent. Then the second part in which the zero slope is converted to full super elevation, we call it super elevation runoff, and this happens on the spiral curve. So the super elevation runoff can be calculated using this equation. LR means the length of the runoff. So we have here W, which is the width of the lane. Okay, it's normally taken as 12 feet. We have E here. E means super elevation which you want to achieve. We have delta here, which is a maximum relative gradient, the change in gradient basically from the spiral curve, the change in gradient happening on the spiral curve. For that we have a table here. We have n here. N means number of lanes. So how many lanes are rotated? Rotated means how many lanes you are changing the cross section slope. So I showed you in the previous slides, the slope was not changed for all the lanes. The slope was changed for some of the lanes because some of the lanes may already be having a slope which we require as super elevation. So we don't need to change the slope of those lanes. So number of lanes rotated means number of lanes for which you are changing the cross slope. Normally we change it from the center line. So if it's a 2-lane highway, then number of lanes will be 1. If it's a 4-lane highway, it will be 2, and so on. And then we have an additional factor of n here, which is the adjustment factor for number of lanes. Okay, so we have been given the values of this factor. Okay, so again it depends upon how many lanes you are rotating. If you're rotating one lane, then it's 1. If you are rotating two lane, like 1.5 lanes means 1. So it's a 3-lane road, you are rotating 1.5 lanes, so it will be 0.83, 0.75 for 2 lanes, and so on. Okay, so it's an adjustment factor. Now we have this table which makes our lives easier for a limited set of values. If you want to find out LR for these speeds, okay, so you already fixed the speeds. The number of lanes rotated is only 1 or 2. Okay, and you have a lane width of 12 feet only, and super elevation is between this range. Then in this case you can use a table to directly find out the value of LR. So this table can be used if your values are within these limits, within these ranges. Okay, but if you have, for example, number of lanes are not 2, they are more than 2, you have to use the equation. Or if the lane width is not 12 feet, then you have to use the equation. Okay, now in this example we have to find out the length of a spiral curve for the following conditions. The spiral curve will join radius of 800 feet, and the design speed of the curve is 60 miles per hour. The lateral offset is 0.66 feet, which is standard, and the increase of radial acceleration is 2 feet per square seconds per second. So that is the value of c. Now for the length of the spiral curve, we have two equations here. Okay, and for both the equations we have the parameters. U is given, which is the speed, R the radius, c is given, and for this equation we need lateral offset, so we have all these values. So from the first equation the value is coming out to be 425 feet. From the second equation we got 88.99 feet. Okay, now both of them are calling at minimum values. So from these values, again if you pick 88.99 feet, then you will not fulfill this standard 425. So but if you pick 425, then you are fulfilling both equations. So you will go with this value for the first part. Now in the second part they have given me data about super elevation. Why? Because we said the attainment of super elevation should be on the spiral curve. So the length which you are selecting for the spiral curve should also be enough for super elevation runoff as well. So that's why we have the values for super elevation given here. So we are rotating we have 2 lanes and 2% normal cross slope and 4% super elevation. Lane width is 12 feet. Now with these values we can do this. So I already have a table here. Okay, super elevation is given, which is 4%. So I will look here, 4%. Okay, and lane width is 12 feet, which is the normal for this table. The highway has 2 lanes. Okay, so 2 lane means 1 in this table. Okay, 2 lane is represented with 1 because it means 1 lane is rotating. And speed was given here as 60 miles per hour. So for 4, 60 miles per hour with one lane rotating, we have this. So this is the length of runoff required for super elevation according to this table. So this is 107 feet. From the previous two equations, I got the minimum length of the spiral curve as 425 feet. There were two values and I picked up 425 feet because it is satisfying both criteria. Now, is this length satisfying the runoff criteria as well? And the answer is yes. So this length satisfies all criteria, so I will take this one. If runoff length was more than this, then I would have taken the runoff length. Then this is the equation for calculating tangent runout length. Again, tangent runout is a part of attaining super elevation in which the slope goes from normal to zero. Okay, it is happening on the tangent. So here what do we need? We need the normal slope. ENC means normal slope, ED means super elevation, and then we need the super elevation runoff length. So although runoff happens after tangent runout, but we need its length in order to calculate tangent runout. Okay, and again, if you are using fixed values, then we have this table which you can use. Okay, so the first row is super elevation, the first column is design speed, and then you can calculate the value of uh, the value of the tangent runout. Okay, now let us discuss the concept of stopping side distance provision on a horizontal curve. Now on a horizontal curve, like we discussed for vertical curve as well, the curvature of the road is blocking our line of sight. So if I'm at point A and if I want to look at point B, so I will be looking in a straight line, right? So this is my actual line of sight, and the length of the road which I can see till point B is equal to S. So S is the length along the road, which is a curve, and my actual line of sight is a straight line between A and B. So I can look directly at point B if there is no obstruction in my line of sight. Okay, so let's say that obstruction is obviously on the side of the road, because I am looking at point B in a straight line. So anything on the side of the road will block my line of sight. So we are calling that thing, that object which can block my line of sight, as sight obstruction. Okay, so that sight obstruction is on the side of the road and it can block your line of sight. Now how far you can see, or whether you can see point B or not, it will depend upon the distance of the obstruction from the curve. So if I place this obstruction here, then my line of sight can see more distance. If I place this object closer to the road, then my line of sight will see less distance. Okay, I can only see up to this distance. Okay, if I place it here, then maybe I will see this distance. Okay, because the object will move far. So the distance between the object and the road will determine how much can I see along the road. Okay, can I see point B, or can I see this point C, or can I see this point D? Okay, so it all depends upon how much is the distance between the obstruction on the side of the road and the road itself, the curvature of the road. So now let's say the distance to which you can see on the road is your sight distance. Okay, and it should be equal to the required sight distance for stopping, which we say is our least criteria, the minimum safe criteria. And the angle which is made by this curve is 2 theta. The angle which is made by the curve having length of side distance is 2 theta. Okay, then if you apply the equation S equals to r theta, length of the curve equals to r into theta, so S equals to r into theta, where theta is 2 theta. Theta is whatever the value of theta is, I'm saying is 2 theta, the angle. Okay, so whatever the angle is, I'm calling it 2 theta. So S is side distance here, angle is 2 theta here, and then multiply by r, and then pi by 180 to convert from radians to degrees. Okay, so from this equation theta equals to this. Okay, so theta equals 28.65 upon r into S, and 28.65 is basically 2 pi upon 180. Now if you look at this distance, which is taken from the center to the point on the road, then this complete distance from the center to the road is radius. Okay, and the distance between the road and the chord. Okay, so my line of sight becomes a chord, right? It's a straight line between the 2 points of the curve, so it becomes a chord. So the distance between the curve and the chord is what we call as m, middle ordinate. So this distance is the distance between the obstruction and the center is r minus m. So this distance from the obstruction to the center is r minus m. The complete distance was r till the road, then minus m. And if you look here, we have a right angle triangle here. Okay, between the obstruction, the center, and the beginning of the curve. So it's a right angle triangle, and this right angle triangle, if this complete angle was 2 theta, then this half angle is theta. Okay, so if you take the cos theta of this triangle, it will be this side, which is r minus m, upon this side, which is r, radius. So cos theta equals r minus m upon r. R minus m is this side, and r is the radius this side, and theta is this angle, half of the angle. And we already have the value of theta from here. So if you put the value of theta into this equation, then cos theta equals to this, and from this equation you can find out the value of m here. So the value for m, which is the which they call as a horizontal sight line offset, the distance between the road and the side obstruction, is equal to this. So if you want to maintain a safe side distance equal to s, then m should come out from this equation. So we can use this graph as well instead of using the equation. So on the x-axis you have the m value, horizontal sight line offset. On the y-axis you have the radius of the curve, and each curve, each line on this graph is basically representing a different speed. Okay, so you want let's say radius of any curve. So first of all, find out how much was the horizontal sight line offset. Then from that point onwards, you go to your required speed line, and from that line find out the radius of the curve. Okay, so let us see with an example here. We have a horizontal curve, and the radius of the curve is 800 feet, connects to tangents and posted speed limit of 35 miles per hour. And we have to find out the horizontal sight line offset, because you want to place a large billboard on the side of the road. So how much should be the distance of this billboard? It's an advertisement board, the big boards which you see for advertisement on the side of the road. So they want to place something like this. So they want to find out how much should be the distance between the board and the road itself without reducing the sight distance. So there is already a curve there, and that curve already has a safe sight distance. So we want to place a board on the side of the road so that the sight distance does not get reduced. Okay, so you can do it using the equations, and you can do it using the curve as well. So if you do it using the curve, so we have a radius of 800 feet, which is somewhere here, and from that you go forward to the point of your required speed. So the line which is for 35 miles per hour speed is here. Okay, so 800 feet will meet the line of 35 miles per hour on this point, and from this point you take the x value, which is 10 feet. Okay, so the board should be 10 feet from the center line of the road, to achieve to keep the safe stopping sight distance. If you want to use the equations, then first of all find out stopping sight distance using the equation, and here the gradient is not given, so I will take it as 0. That speed is 35 miles per hour, and instead of doing a upon 32.2, you can directly put the value of f, which is 0.35, and speed is given. Perception reaction time is 2.5 here. So you find out the value of stopping sight distance from here, which comes up to be 245.29 feet. Then you put this value in the equation for m. So you have radius 800 feet, s is 245.29 feet, and if you calculate m, it comes out to be 9.6 feet, which is almost what we got from the graph. We got 10 feet, and here is 9.6 feet, so it's almost the same.